Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jen. Welcome back to the Mindful Insights podcast with innerworkcoaching.life. If you'd like more information or free content, please head on over to the website or subscribe on YouTube. This is episode 4, which I wanted to do the same thing as I did with episode 2, and this will probably be an alternating thing for a little while, where I pull about 3 quotes from the previous episode and go into a little bit more detail, because a lot of the things that I write about have multiple layers of meaning, and a lot of people find it useful to, I don't know, kind of hear me go into it in more everyday language rather than, in the written word. I tend to write pretty long sentences, so it's probably helpful. Anyway, so thank you so much for being here. Again, I'm kind of a newbie, and, I appreciate all of you guys who are tuning in and listening to this, this 4th episode. Kind of cool. So anyway, okay. All right. To the point now. The first quote that I wanted to cover from the last article is, "We must learn to accept and love ourselves completely on all levels and unconditionally, which includes those parts of us that we may label as quote unquote bad or quote unquote negative." So we all have things about ourselves that we don't like. We all probably have some thoughts that don't necessarily serve us well. I'm pretty sure that most people have a little bit of a self-esteem issue. It all happens on kind of a scale. You know what I mean? The key here, though, and I'm talking mostly to people who have had issues with self-esteem, is that beating yourself up over something isn't going to help the situation, and it isn't going to help you feel better either. Now, it's important to feel an appropriate amount of guilt if we've done something wrong, or if we need to take responsibility for something. This is good if we feel an appropriate amount of guilt. However, what happens for many of us, especially in the spiritual awakening circles, is that we find that we've been programmed. We find that we've been conditioned. And what this conditioning tends to do is make us question ourselves and doubt ourselves, which is indicative that we have been gaslit in the past or manipulated otherwise, that our emotions have been manipulated. So it's one of those things where it'll be different scenario for every person, but a lot of the emotional processes are very similar. So the things that we might think of as being terrible about ourselves might actually be blessings in disguise, or they might actually lead to something else that's a blessing in disguise, some deeper level of understanding, some mistake that we make that, because I don't know if if you're the same way, but usually if you make a mistake once, you don't really make it again. You know what I mean? Like if the consequences are as such that you are shown that this is not a good thing, then you're likely to listen to that. So despite anything that may happen, and despite any mistakes or failures you might have under your belt, try to repurpose them. Try to give them some kind of meaning. Give purpose to your pain. Derive some kind of a lesson or some kind of a story from it. Even if it's not necessarily 100% clear what you're supposed to learn, when that does click, and it will, then it'll be very, very, very much worth it. But you have to be open with yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself. The next quote that I wanted to go into more detail about is, "These automatically running thought loops come from deeper levels of belief systems that are ingrained and have been conditioned into your subconscious mind, thus controlling you without you even realizing that this is what your ego is doing to the vessel your soul is supposed to be piloting. So I did mention conditioning before, and this is one of those topics where you could literally go on forever with examples of what it might look like and things like that. One good way to tell if it's a conditioned thought is if it makes you feel like crap. If you feel crappy, if your brain is beating you up, if you're constantly like at your own throat, then there's a good chance that this is a conditioned program. Because you at your core, you in your soul, in your inner being, you are pure love, you're pure light. You're not going to treat yourself that way. So the ego has to be differentiated. Anything that's not encouraging or supportive or loving to you is more than likely a conditioned thought pattern. And this means, now it sounds a little scary, especially if you've never been introduced to this concept before. However, this is actually good news, because that means that you have the ability to reprogram how you think on purpose, just by paying attention. Just by beginning to pay attention. And, meditation, actually, people look at me all crazy because I'm like, well, I don't really have racing thoughts very often anymore. I don't have a whole lot of negative stuff going on. As a matter of fact, it's pretty quiet in my brain. So I don't really sit around getting lost in some crazy downward thought spiral anymore. Usually if I'm using my mind, I'm using it to visualize where I want to be in a couple weeks or a month or whatever. Or I'm visualizing myself doing the work that is going to continue to propel me forward. It's one of those things where I want to use my mind, and I don't want to be used by my mind, especially if it's been programmed by everybody outside of myself and I'm not the person in charge. Even though that is my birthright, it is my life, it is my body, it is my mind, it is my soul. These are my thoughts. They don't belong to anybody else. And that's an important realization to have. It takes a minute sometimes, to fully, and it's not so much that it takes a minute to wrap your head around. It's more like if it happened to you, it might take you a few times of being exposed to the same information for it to fully click. But the information that you need will always find you in perfectly divine timing, so don't worry about it. Everything will find you at exactly the time that you need it to. And whether you help your own healing along or not, it may happen organically. However, some of these tools and tricks and things, some of these revelations, some of these levels of understanding can really help you speed up the process. And who doesn't want to heal faster, right? I mean, I don't want to wander the earth forever carrying around a bunch of emotional, energetic baggage. That doesn't sound like fun to me. I want to thrive. I want to prosper. I want to live comfortably. I want to be able to experience good, positive, happy things in my life. And in order to do that, I know and understand that I have to practice a positive mindset, and I have to recognize when there's something there that needs to be healed so that I can consciously participate in my own existence. The third and last quote. By giving other people credit or blame for our pain and suffering, we are giving those other people power and control over us, therefore perpetuating the victim mentality on a deep level. All right, random synchronicity time. How funny is it that I had planned this a few days ago, and then this morning I came across a thing on Facebook that was saying something about how Tony Robbins offended the Me Too movement. And So I didn't do a whole ton of research, but it's because this whole Me Too thing and um, the sexual assault and abuse world is kind of a close to home topic for me. It's close to home, and it is often emotionally triggering for me. So the thing is that I wanted to give a perspective from my point of view, because my experience is all over the map. I have firsthand experience with covert narcissistic abuse. I have firsthand experience with physical abuse. I have firsthand experience with repetitive and continuous rape. I have firsthand experience with all sorts of stuff. So the thing that I wanted to cover more than anything else on this slide, right? Now, I'm not going to jump on any one of the bandwagons. I don't think it's a black and white issue. I do think that perpetuating victim mentality is an issue. And with a movement like this, it's a very, very fine line to walk. And so I'm speaking to anyone who is a survivor who is not to the point of emotional maturity or emotional well-being quite yet. And the best way to tell is if you can talk about these things openly without necessarily allowing your emotional triggers to get the best of you. Now, if you've been the victim of a single assault, then you probably have PTSD. If you have been the victim of ongoing and continuous abuse, then you probably have complex PTSD. And there's so much to know about these topics that what is really required in order to open a serious dialogue about this is that everyone gets educated. Everyone has to be educated about the nuances and be able to emotionally as well as intellectually discern the difference between, for example, what is the difference between someone who has a temper and someone who is abusive? I can tell you right now from personal experience with both that there is a huge difference. There is a massive difference in the way that it feels, you know. There's a massive difference in the way that the interaction feels to you. When you're around someone who is purposely vicious, who is attacking you, or who is covertly playing mind games, I guess would be the best way to put it. Playing mind games in order to emotionally manipulate you. These are all acts of aggression. These are not things that have anything to do with someone's sex drive, and they're not things that have anything to do with what someone is wearing. These sexual assault instances, any act of aggression or act of violence against another human being comes from a place of fear, and it comes from a place of ignorance, quite frankly, too. But it isn't about sex. It's about control, and it's about fear, and it's about intimidation. Because this person doesn't get off, so to speak, on the sexual assault itself, or on the rape, or on the they get off on the power. They get off on the power that they wield over someone. And so several things that are important. One, to speak out as soon as possible, safely, right? And two, to not let it ruin you. Because it's really easy to give in to that fear. It's very easy to give in to all men must be assholes, so I'm never going to date again. It's real easy to give in to I can't leave my house because someone is going to attack me as I'm walking down the road. It's really easy to give in to that fear because that fear emotion is huge. It feels enormous. It feels insurmountable. It's terrifying. But I can tell you, based on my journey, that if you let that terror dictate your decisions, then your abuser still has power over you. That is how they control you. It's an energetic tie. That is how they control you, even from far away. Even if you've been thousands of miles apart for years. As long as you are emotionally allowing them to dictate your life, then they still have that control. I was originally told this the first time, and the first time it really hit me like a freaking Mack truck when I heard this, when I realized that I am partially responsible and I need to take responsibility for my portion of my life, not even just specifically any particular relationship, but I need to take responsibility for my life, and I need to make the hard decisions in a moment-to-moment basis. Whether that means walking away despite being scared of being attacked or not, So yeah, tough topic. But the first time I was told this, I had been in a situation where it escalated, and the other person was threatening to call the police. So instead of letting them do it, I was just like, you know what, screw you, I'm going to call the police first. And so, I met up with this police officer, and because I was a little distraught, I had been threatened, I had been, told a few things that, really just didn't sit well with me, and I was completely triggered, so I just took off, So anyway, I talked to this police officer, and he was the first person who brought up this concept to me, and he goes, well, listen, if you keep going back, and if you keep continuing to have a relationship with this person, then they're going to continue to have control over you. You have to just cut it off. If they're toxic to you, you have to just cut it off, period. And so, since then, I've become more aware of what my responsibility really is. And again, this healing process is also going to look different for everyone. And sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes it takes some on purpose facing of certain fears, doing things in healthy ways that maybe were abusive in your past, but remaining open to trying again so that you can have a different experience, make a different memory. It's much easier said than done. But if you're on this healing journey, I absolutely commend you, and I'm very proud of you for getting as far as you've gotten, because I know it's dark and lonely, and you feel like nobody understands, You feel like you're all by yourself, and nobody really gets what's going on in your head, and you don't know where all your pain is coming from. You don't know where all this garbage is coming up from, until you do, until you realize it, until you have those revelations. Identifying what abuse actually is and what it is not is really, really important. So having said that, and having kind of gone into my little spiel, there are of course more things that I could say, but that was the most important. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end this here because this episode is getting kind of long. So thank you so much for being here. I, again, invite you to go on over and visit innerworkcoaching.life if you want more free content. And also don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow me on Facebook if you are so inclined. Also, there is a Facebook group where we can actually have community discussions. So if you'd like to join that, the link is in the description. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope to talk to you again next time. Thanks. Thank you so much for watching. No matter where you are on your journey, please take good care of yourself from within on all levels. If you'd like more guidance, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or visit www.innerworkcoaching.life for more content or to apply for one-on-one coaching. With unconditional love and light, I wish you an amazing week, and I hope to see you again for my next video. Namaste.